You bought a beautiful potted plant last spring. You watered it every single day. You talked to it. You even gave it a name. And by July, it was dead. Sound familiar? Or maybe it was worse. Maybe you went on a short trip, came back after 5 days, and the thing that greeted you at your front door looked like it had aged 10 years in your absence. Crispy leaves. Drooping stems. That guilty feeling in your chest when you realize you failed something that couldn't even talk back. Maybe you even tried to save it. You cut off the dead parts, moved it to a sunnier spot, whispered some encouragement to it like that would help. Nothing worked. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a small voice said maybe gardening just isn't for you. Here's the twist nobody tells you. The problem was never you. The problem was the plant. Some perennials are drama queens. They need constant attention, perfect sunlight, and a watering schedule tighter than a flight itinerary. One missed day and they throw a tantrum. But there's a secret group of plants that grow the exact opposite way. You could forget about them for 2 weeks, come back, and they'd still be sitting there green, calm, and thriving like nothing happened. Like they were never worried about you in the first place. Today I'm handing you 10 of these plants. 10 pot dwellers built for people who love beautiful gardens but don't have the time, the money, or honestly the patience to babysit them. These aren't rare or expensive finds either. Most of them are sitting in your local nursery right now, quietly overlooked because they don't scream for attention on the shelf. Stick around because number 7 on this list is the one most container gardeners walk right past in the store, not knowing it's tougher than half the plants they're already struggling to keep alive. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which one fits your space, your schedule, and your patience level. But before we dive in, if you're new here, welcome to Gentle Greens. This is the place for garden lovers who want a beautiful space without spending a fortune or losing their weekends to it. Every video here is built around one simple idea. Gardening should feel peaceful, not like another chore on your to-do list. And if you've been here before, welcome back. You already know exactly what kind of value we're about to unpack. Now do me one favor before we start. Tap that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because these tips could genuinely save you money and heartbreak this planting season. Alright, let's get into it. Plant 1. Sedum stone crop. Let's start with the plant that basically laughs at neglect. Sedum stores water in its thick fleshy leaves, kind of like a camel crossing a desert. That means if you forget to water it for a week or 2, it simply shrugs and keeps going about its business. It loves full sun, doesn't care about soil quality, and actually performs better when you leave it alone. Rich, heavily fertilized soil can actually make sedum weak and floppy, so resist the urge to pamper it. The mistake most beginners make? Overwatering it out of guilt. You see it looking a little dry and you panic, grab the watering can and drown it. Sedum doesn't want your sympathy, it wants space. Give it less attention than you think it needs, and it will reward you with thick, colorful clusters that look like a succulent bouquet sitting right on your windowsill or porch railing. Plant 2. Hens and chicks. This one has a strange name but an even stranger superpower. Hens and chicks multiply on their own, sending out little baby rosettes around the mother plant without you lifting a finger. One day you have a single plant, a few months later you have a whole family living in the same pot, completely free of charge. They handle drought, poor soil, and even a bit of frost depending on your growing zone. If your pot gets crowded, that's not a problem. That's the plant doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Some gardeners even use the babies to fill up other pots around their home, turning one plant into an entire collection over a single season. Just make sure the container has drainage holes, because the only thing that kills this plant faster than neglect is soggy roots sitting in water. Give it dry feet and bright light, and it will practically take care of itself for years. Plant 3. Daylily. Here's an uncommon truth about daylilies. Despite the name, each individual flower only lasts a single day, blooming in the morning and fading by night. But the plant produces so many blooms in rotation, sometimes dozens across a season, that you'd never notice the turnover happening. Daylilies tolerate poor soil, inconsistent watering, and beginner mistakes better than almost anything else you could plant in a container. They're one of the few perennials that genuinely seem to forgive you for forgetting them. They come back year after year with barely any help, and once established, dividing them is optional, not required. Some gardeners keep the same daylily in the same pot for 5 or 6 years without ever touching it. This is the plant for someone who wants color without a calendar reminder buzzing on their phone. Quick pause before we hit the second half of this list, because plant number 7 is honestly the biggest surprise on here, and I don't want you to miss it. If this is helping you already, tap that like button. It genuinely tells YouTube to show this video to more garden owners who need it, and it costs you absolutely nothing. And drop a comment telling me which zone you're gardening in. I read every single one, and it helps me plan future videos around what you actually need, not just what I assume you need. Alright, let's keep going. Plant 4. Black-eyed Susan. If you want a plant that practically ignores bad weather, this is it. Black-eyed Susans handle heat, light drought, and rough soil with a kind of stubborn confidence that's hard not to admire. While other flowers wilt under a heat wave, these ones barely flinch. Their golden petals attract pollinators, which means your pot becomes a mini ecosystem without you doing any extra work. Bees and butterflies show up on their own, treating your patio like a rest stop on their daily route. The secret most people miss is that deadheading, which just means removing the spent flowers, isn't mandatory here. Skip it if you're busy, and the plant will still keep blooming through most of the season regardless. It's one of those rare flowers that looks intentional, even when you've done absolutely nothing to maintain it. Plant 5. Russian Sage. This plant looks fragile with its silvery, feathery leaves swaying in the wind, but don't let that fool you. Russian sage is built for tough love, not gentle care. It actually prefers dry soil over moist soil, which means overwatering is more dangerous here than underwatering. Once it settles into a pot, it can handle scorching sun and weeks of dry spells without complaint, almost like it enjoys being tested. If your area gets brutal summer heat that kills off other flowering plants, this is often the one still standing tall in September. The lavender-colored blooms also release a light herbal scent when brushed against, giving your patio a spa-like feel with zero upkeep involved. It's proof that low maintenance doesn't have to mean boring or plain looking. Plant 6. Yarrow. Yarrow is one of those plants that seems to defy logic. It grows in rocky, dry, nutrient-poor conditions out in the wild, so a container filled with average potting soil feels like a luxury upgrade to it. It spreads gently, blooms in flat clusters of color that resemble tiny umbrellas, and shrugs off dry spells that would wilt most other flowering perennials within days. Even in poor light conditions, it manages to hold its shape and keep blooming steadily. If you're someone who has killed plants by simply forgetting them on the balcony, yarrow might be the first thing you finally keep alive without trying. It doesn't ask for fertilizer, doesn't demand constant pruning, and rarely attracts pests looking to make a meal out of it. Plant 7. Lamb's Ear. Here's the plant most people walk straight past without realizing what it can actually do. Lamb's ear has soft, fuzzy, silver leaves that feel almost like fabric, which already makes it a favorite for kids and curious garden visitors who can't resist touching it. But the real secret is its drought tolerance. Those fuzzy leaves actually help the plant retain moisture and reflect sunlight away from the surface, which means it survives heat waves that damage other container plants around it. It's essentially wearing built-in sun protection. It rarely needs feeding, rarely needs trimming, and somehow still looks intentional and elegant sitting on a porch step or windowsill. Pair it next to something with bold color, like black-eyed Susan or coneflower, and the texture contrast alone makes your container look like it was styled by a professional, even though you barely touched it after planting. Plant 8. Catmint. If you've ever wanted a plant that basically maintains itself while still looking like it came from a professional garden design, catmint is it. It blooms in soft purple spikes that ripple gently in the breeze, tolerates poor soil, and handles both full sun and partial shade without sulking about the difference. Even if it gets a bit leggy by midsummer, which just means the stems stretch out and lose their tidy shape, one quick trim brings it right back to a full bushy form within a couple of weeks. That's the only maintenance step this plant really asks of you. And it's optional depending on how tidy you want your pot to look. It's low effort with a high-end look, which is exactly the kind of trade-off lazy gardeners love. As a bonus, cats genuinely enjoy rubbing against it. So if you have a curious pet at home, expect a bit of extra attention around this particular pot. Plant 9. Coneflower. Coneflower, also known as echinacea, is proof that tough plants can still be beautiful, even striking. It handles drought, poor soil and general neglect while still producing large, bold blooms that pollinators absolutely cannot resist. Butterflies especially seem drawn to it above almost everything else on this list. The uncommon tip here is to leave the dried flower heads standing through fall and winter instead of cutting them back like most gardening guides tell you to do. Birds, especially finches, feed on the seeds left behind, turning your pot into a small feeding station during the colder months. The dried structure also adds visual interest to your container, even when everything else has gone quiet for the season. So you get beauty in every single stage, blooming, fading, and dried, with almost no maintenance required at any point along the way. Plant 10. Ornamental grass. We're closing the list with something people rarely think of as a container perennial ornamental grass. Varieties like blue fescue are compact, drought-resistant, and require almost no feeding throughout the growing season. They add movement and texture that flowering plants simply can't offer, swaying gently with the wind and giving your container display a softer, more natural feel that changes throughout the day as the light shifts. It's the kind of subtle detail that makes a container garden feel alive rather than staged. Best part, they rarely attract pests and need dividing only once every few years, if at all. Some gardeners leave the same clump untouched for 4 or 5 seasons and never see a decline in health or appearance. It's an easy way to add height and softness to a pot without adding another task to your gardening routine. Bonus tip: the pot matters more than you think. Before we wrap up, here's something almost nobody talks about, and it applies to every single plant on this list. The container you choose can make the difference between a plant that thrives on neglect and one that quietly rots away without you noticing. Terracotta pots are your best friend for lazy gardening. Unlike plastic or glazed ceramic, terracotta is porous, which means excess moisture actually escapes through the sides of the pot itself, not just the drainage hole at the bottom. That's a built-in safety net against overwatering, which happens to be the #1 killer of container perennials, even the tough ones we just covered. Also, skip the tiny decorative pots you see at the checkout counter. A plant that looks perfectly sized in a small pot today will outgrow it within a season, and cramped roots lead to stress, poor blooms, and slower growth. Go slightly bigger than you think you need. It gives roots room to breathe and reduces how often you'll need to repot or divide anything down the line. And one last thing, always fill the bottom inch of your pot with coarse gravel or broken pottery pieces before adding soil. It keeps drainage holes from clogging and gives water somewhere to go besides sitting around your plant's roots. Small step, but it quietly prevents most of the problems that make people think they have a black thumb when really it was just poor drainage all along. So which one should you actually pick? If you barely remember to water anything, start with sedum or hens and chicks. They thrive on being forgotten. If you want color that pollinators love without the fuss, black-eyed Susan and coneflower are your best friends. And if you travel often or live somewhere with brutal summer heat, Russian sage and yarrow were basically made for your lifestyle. There's no wrong choice here. Every plant on this list was chosen specifically because it forgives mistakes, survives inconsistency, and still manages to look like you know exactly what you're doing. And there you have it, 10 perennials that prove a beautiful container garden doesn't have to cost you time, money, or stress. The truth is, most gardening struggles come from choosing plants that were never built for beginners in the first place. Pick the right plant and suddenly you look like you have a green thumb, even if you barely lifted a finger all season. Gardening was never meant to feel like a second job. It's supposed to feel like something calm you get to come home to, not another task competing for your energy after a long day. Once you start choosing plants that actually match your lifestyle instead of fighting against it, everything gets easier, and your patio finally starts to feel like the peaceful little corner it was always meant to be. If this video helped you, do me a favor and subscribe to Gentle Greens. We drop tips like this every week for garden owners who want results without the overwhelm. Like this video if you're planning to try even one of these plants, and comment below which one made your list. I'll see you in the next one.